there again, it's, how many of us have just done it in the language we understand right now?
Oh, there you go. English.
So it's actually, my wife, she processes by handwriting. She does. And I know that when she was going through their theology classes, to actually start to understand a book, she wrote out that book. She had Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. She had all the Gospels. She had Acts, Romans, and Hebrews that she did. And it was just in English. But at the same time, it takes a lot of determination to do that, first off. But secondly, if you actually do it with the intent you're supposed to, it also takes a lot of courage. Because what are we not supposed to do? Add to or take away. Not one jot nor tittle. Right? I guess I must be running people out here. I didn't know I was going to be that back today.
I came back.
Oh, good. Good. I'm glad you came back. All right. Let's go to chapter 18. Anybody? Questions, comments, concerns? I mean, today's more of a, yes, sir.
I'd just like to comment about the king and the characteristics God sets for that king. Of course, Solomon is an arch example of how not to do it.
True.
And he was the wisest man who ever lived, so we know wisdom isn't going to cut it.
Oh, yeah.
But Jesus is the example of every one of those, and he is our soon-coming king.
Oh, absolutely.
He will meet every one of those criteria.
Absolutely.
And the king should be righteous and just.
You're right. Which is really interesting to me why this prophecy fits where it does. Because it goes back to God's own character. He knows his people. We can think all day long, well, I keep this from God. He knows his people. He knows that they're going to, as soon as Moses is out of the picture, they're going to start questioning this Joshua character. And this taking of the land, I don't know if we can do it. He knows that they're going to start doing it. He knows that they're going to have an attempt at keeping a relationship with Yahweh. This is not going to work. This is not going to last. He knows that the fathers and the mothers and the kids are going to rebel and they're going to do all these things. He knows it. And so he knows that when he says, I am your only God, he also lays in there, you're going to choose somebody else. Because when you set a king over yourself, what are you doing? You are saying, I am going to fall under your authority. Weren't they already under God's authority?
Right.
Every bit of
They
it.
were obeying, but not obeying.
But they were under God's supreme authority.
They wanted to see a God that they could serve.
Right.
So let's start.
When you're
It
on
was
your
the
own,
faith.
when and you choose to worship other gods, I'm going to disperse.
Right.
He always knows.
Right. He knows when, and he's like, okay, this is all good, 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 good. But when you choose to go against this, here you go. He lays it out. He's laying it out. And we can look at this as he's laid out the beginning
Yeah.
to the end. He's laid it out. So let's go on to chapter 18. Portion for the priests. Okay. Priests and the Levites. They're an entire tribe that does not have an inheritance in the land, right?
An inheritance of.
But their inheritance is in God.
Yeah, right. They didn't get the land. They got God.
God got them.
Right. But, okay, so yes, I'll change that vernacular. You're right. God got them. They received the blessing from Him. Okay? But they received it why?
Because the other tribes,
Well, I mean, just the fact that they're They are God's portion.
Right, that happened back with the Golden Calf.
Right.
Mount Sinai.
They chose God over what?
Over me.
Over popularity.
You know, what did he want before that?
He wanted everybody.
He wanted more male.
He wanted everybody. He wanted all the tribes. He wanted them all. And the firstborn male was to be his portion. Right? But he wanted them all. I'm the firstborn male in my family. I would have fallen under that category. Now the Levites actually take that position. Okay? When we look at the portion for the priests, and we're looking at 18, and we're actually looking at all the things that they receive, the first fruit also of thy corn, of the wine, of the oil, the first fruit of the fleece of the sheep, thou shalt give them. Okay? Why are they given provision? Were they hard workers? Most of them. We know that. We know that there was land that was inside the compounds that wasn't theirs, but that's what they worked. Right? So did they not make enough food for themselves? I'm asking the question.
Why do they need food, is that what you're saying?
I'm asking the question, why are they being given a portion?
Because their job is servicing God, and because they're servicing God, they don't have time to go out and raise crops and so forth to do that. So the people feed them.
Okay. Glad you brought it up that way. Because when we look at what the king's roles were, over here, we know he had one thing to do. How long was that supposed to take him? Or what do you just guess that was supposed to be, as far as the time length taken?
7 years.
I don't know. I know it would take multiple years
To write the Torah?
to write it.
Yes, I would hope so.
But at the same time, that means he had to know it. He had to prepare the skins, because we know it was only done on sheepskin. He had to prepare the skins, 49 sheets, 49 sheep to one Torah scroll, something like that. Is that right?
They had to practice writing the letters.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's something like that, though.
If the letter's messed up, they gotta toss it.
Right, and if one letter is messed up,
50 sheep.
then you know.
So he had to practice writing those letters before.
Take these 49.
So, when we look at his one role, his role was to be spending time going through the law, through the Torah. That was what his time was supposed to be taken up with. The Levites, on the other hand, what was their time supposed to be taken up with?
Sacrifices.
Servicing the temple?
Servicing the people for him.
Well, when they moved the tabernacle, that was part of it.
Right?
Gathering the wood.
Absolutely.
The 2 daily sacrifices?
Yeah. Forget about it when there's a feast.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness. When there's a dedication of an altar. When there's a dedication of the temple.
Worship God.
Worshiping God. You know, their role was ministry, 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 ministry. Right?
Heaping oil in the lamps.
And all of the lamps. Whose responsibility was it to know the Torah?
The Levites.
Everybody.
The Levites were to teach.
Everybody's responsibility was to know the Torah. The Levites were the ones to teach the Torah. They were to teach the parents, to teach the kids. Right?
So why was Judah called the lawgiver?
It's interesting.
Why would you call it up?
The lawgiver.
What did Donnie say?
Judah is called the lawgiver.
Because Yeshua comes down with that.
I think that would be the best reference.
Yeah, he was a
That,
actual.
that
Because of
Yeshua is the lion of Judah.
He is the lawgiver.
gave us and what they gave the original law.
I'm making a, I guess maybe I'm not making a good point here, but my point with this, and what I was seeing when going through this, was my role. Okay? Because we are called to be one.
Priests
And
kings.
we're supposed to be priests and kings. And right here, he's laid out our do's and our don'ts.
No?
Right? He's laid out. He's laid out the fact that we are to understand the law. We're to understand it not only just by reading it, but by writing it. We're supposed to be effective at sharing it.
Now, one clarification, obviously, we're not meant to be priests and kings at the moment.
Well, right.
Just-
Oh,
I mean,
but I'm
I
the
think
priest
it's
in my home.
important, it's an important clarification.
Well, let me make this
In the
clarification.
kingdom.
You're a priest in your home, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to be a priest in my
right, in
home.
your home.
In the Hebrew, it actually says we're a kingdom of priests.
Right.
It doesn't say that we're kings.
There again.
Yeah, we'll have one king.
Right.
But we're supposed to be kingly. We are supposed to be ruling and reigning with Christ in that coming day.
What in that coming day is a different
Well,
story. But today
that's not a
you're
different
priest.
state.
You're in
That's not a different
training.
story in my point, though. Because we're supposed to be setting up right now
Kingdom is
for
near.
that. Right? I mean, we're not going to be doing that unless we're doing the things now to make that happen. Right? So that requires understanding this book. It requires understanding the sacrifices, and it understands the feasts and all those kind of things. It's something that we're required to know this.
I think maybe though the fine point detail is what you asked Jay, and what he made the point of saying, who is responsible for knowing Torah?
Oh.
Everyone.
Everybody. Right.
Everyone is responsible for knowing Torah. The idea of judging and ministering and sacrificing and things like that, the roles of priests and kings, we may not be in those at the moment. Now, I know it definitely says in your home you are the priest. You know, so yes, there is a role that you should understand and be carrying out in your home at the moment.
Jim, you're going to go start a new job being a crane operator. You've never run a crane before in your life. You've never studied to be a crane operator before. How's your first day go?
I hope they don't put me in the crane.
Here's the thing. Do you keep that job?
No,
Do you even get asked to do that job?
hopefully not.
No. That's my point.
Mhm.
We're supposed to know that before we get there.
But doesn't that fall into the category of knowing Torah? Period.
I think there's a lot more to it. Because there's a lot more than just Torah in this book. There's the prophets. And then there's the Gospels. And then there's the writings. And then there's the this and the that. And then there's the relationship. Because this can tell you, a book can tell you all day long how to play a guitar. But
Yeah.
unless you actually pick up a stupid guitar, you're not going to know how to play it.
Right. And try.
And so that's the same thing with your relationship with Yahweh.
Right?
You can have all the intellectual knowledge you want, but unless you apply it, it's fodder. There's no point. So that's my point. Is that it's more than just understanding or just knowing the Torah. Because I'll tell you this, there's a lot of atheists out there that know the Torah. They
Well,
use this book,
Lots
both
of
forward and
time
back.
knows it better than anyone.
Absolutely. There's a great example. Yes, sir.
My stepdad, when he was,
Well, any of us.
my stepdad, when he was doing, like, mission work in the streets, basically in California for 21 years, he said the reason that he wanted to learn the scripture so much is because there are people in dresses that were guys that were coming up quoting scripture, more so than the, like, pastors and stuff, who knew the scriptures better than they did.
Oh, absolutely.
So the heretic knows scripture, we should know it better.
Absolutely. Okay. So, went through the portion of the priest. I wanted to lay that out because that's where I'm going with this, is that what role are we taking on?
The one we were assigned.
Huh?
one we were assigned.
Okay.
And what was that?
That's very vague. What were you assigned?
Well,
Priest.
but
Love the Lord your God with all your
it's
heart,
vague,
soul,
but
and
it
mind.
depends on your situation. I mean, you have a different role than I do. You have different roles, I should say, than I do. Because you have children, you have a wife. You know, there are elements that, yes, maybe obviously I could be prepared. If I got married, then I would have to understand what my roles as a husband also were, so it's important for me to still understand them, but I'm not practicing them.
Okay. That leads to the point, though. Your book's not different than mine
No?
at all.
They're not
Agreed.
written.
And your knowledge level is going to be different than mine, but it should be moving in the same direction.
Agreed as brothers?
Right, absolutely. And there again, with our relationship, the way it's supposed to be built. I'm laying out that I get what you're saying. You don't have a wife, so guess what? You're not fulfilling that role right now.
Right.
Well, but that's not what this book's telling me to do. It's telling me to understand that relationship because I'm the bride to Christ.
Right?
It's for that relationship's role. It's not for just this earthly role. Women, you're to understand the man's role, right? Why? Because you're going to be married to the Creator. You're going to be married to Christ. It's for that relationship role. It's not for the one that's here.
Sorry.
Just the one that's here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say the one here is
Well, it's like we
not
talk about
important.
how all of this stuff are rehearsals.
Absolutely. Okay. Being that that's the case, 18:14. For these nations which thou shalt possess, hearken unto observers of times, and unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee so to do. I thought it was very interesting the way he says that. Because he's saying, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee so to do.
Yeah,
Does anybody else have a different
What
version?
verse?
It seemed weird because we have Moedim, but obviously he's talking about different times.
He's talking about the times that aren't his. He's
Yeah.
talking about the diviners that aren't his.
Right.
Because we know that back in those days, okay, that a prophet was known as what? A seer. That's what he was called. Okay? We know that Saul, when he went and found, or when they went to, oh goodness, when he runs into Samuel, okay, he actually is being told by his servant, hey, let's go to the seer. Right?
Right, yep.
Am I wrong in that?
Yep.
What does a seer make you think of?
Someone
Prophet.
that sees the future.
A diviner, someone that's got kind of a touch of the other side. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The Lord thy God hath not suffered thee to do so. So to do. That's what my version says. Anybody else have a different version?
The Hebrew says given.
I'm in King James.
And you're in,
Given.
you're in
Given.
14.
1814?
1814.
No, it says that Hebrew says given.
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 For these nations
He
who
is
are
not given
possessing
these things
listed
to do.
those using
And of course
magic
he has
and
given
diviners,
us
says for you, Yahweh, your
Nothing
Elohim, has
about
not
it.
appointed such.
Right. Okay. So he's not making us go to them. Why?
Because they're not his.
Okay. Okay, but there's prophets later. But there's prophets later.
Are you talking about where it says that he hasn't given you these things to be astrologers and diviners? Is that what you're talking about?
Here's the thing though. When it says to hearken unto observers of time,
Where's
aren't
that?
we supposed to observe the seasons?
Yeah, and the NASB it has witchcraft for that.
Yeah, it just says astrologers and diviners.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about time.
Here's the thing. Astrologers are studying what?
Stars.
Stars. Sun, moon, and
Sun,
stars.
moon, stars,
Why?
to worship it.
To worship them.
The word itself is anan. The word
Anan.
itself is anan. It's
Astrologer.
6049, primitive root to cover, used only as a denominative form to cloud over, figuratively, to act covertly, practice magic, bring enchanter, observer of time, soothsayer, sorcerer.
Okay.
That's the word that's listed there.
He is making out observance of time is a bad thing, right? Why?
Soothsaying.
I think he's saying it's bad for them because they're trying to predict the future, but if you'll study this, he already gives you the future.
Okay, I'll throw this in. Inside a house. What time of year is this? Is that an observance of time? Comes every year.
25th is the winter solstice.
Sure, but it's just an observance of time. We know that Hasatan sets himself inside in the midst of what? The feast. And we know that originally when he did that, he just said, let's tweak this one little thing. Now let's just tweak this one little thing. But are we supposed to know when Passover is?
Yes.
Are we supposed to know when unbread, first fruits? We're supposed to know those. Does that make us observers of time?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
What he's going on is in verse 9.
Okay?
We're to do what he says. But don't, when you enter the land the Lord is giving you, learn to imitate the detestable ways of the nations that live there.
Right.
So there's a lot of things they do besides observing time.
Sure.
He goes, don't do anything that they do. And that's also found in the New Testament.
Oh, absolutely. All over the place. Yes, sir.
You know, I think it really helps though. There's maybe a little bit different twist in the imagery based on this word anan, because the root comes and it means a cloud as covering the sky, nimbus or thundercloud. And the whole idea of what do we know about clouds? Clouds come down to protect, they represent that covering that we have like as a huppah. And don't give yourself any other covering other than mine.
Okay. That's great. That's where I was going. Just took a long time to get there. Okay.
So are we supposed to be observers of time, in your opinion?
His
Yes.
time.
Okay.
His time.
His time.
It's not our time at all.
Yeah, because the word, there's nowhere in there is the word moedim,
Right.
appointed times.
Yeah, that's the problem.
There's nowhere in there does that, anywhere near there is there appointed time. It's talking about different things, actually. That's why translation's somewhat misleading.
Okay. But that doesn't answer the question. I mean, that's a roundabout way of saying, well, no, we can't do it this way. We can't do it. No. We are observers of time. We are to be observers of time. Okay?
But of
His
Moedim.
time. His
Yeah,
time.
of moedim,
No, we have-
appointed
Not even the
times.
Moedim. Let me rephrase that. Not even the Moedim. Because then we put the importance on the Moedim itself instead of him. Okay? We're to be observers of his time. That's what it is. It's his establishment. Why is there a caveat for when you're unclean on Passover? Why is there a way that you can serve it the next month?
Right.
It's because it's not important necessarily about the day. Listen to this before you jump on it, okay? But it's important to see that there's a reason. He knew that people were going to be unclean. He knew if someone died, there was a guy that had to go pick up that body and take it outside the city. And if that was the case on Passover, there was a way for that person to still observe it.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
I think it's more than that, though. I mean, I agree with that, but I think it's more than that. He knew that people have to do, they have to fulfill certain things that he requires. Just like in the regular churches, people go in and take communion and then leave, because they've got to fulfill
Obligation to it.
Yeah, the
Sure.
obligation, so.
But what I'm I'm getting to is that we know God's calendar, His Moedim, okay, His. And I'm making that very, very distinct, okay, because they've not been His for a long time. We are trying to